Welcome to the Hashimoto's Doctor podcast. You're now part of a growing community of people determined to take their health back through education and self-empowerment. But because of the healthcare system today, we don't have access to the types of healthcare that we want. So we have to do things differently. We've got to do things smarter, and we do that by becoming our own advocates. This podcast will give you the perspective and thoughts of one of the world's leading Hashimoto's doctors. So let's get started. Hey guys, hope you're doing well today. Dr. Shook here, and in today's podcast, what I want to talk to you guys about is this, the topic of leptin. Okay, so leptin is a hormone that's released by your body fat. When leptin levels go up, it signals your brain that you're full. Okay, that's the function of it. So the more body fat that you have, typically the more leptin you're going to produce. But that's one of the signals to your brain that you no longer need food, okay, is that you don't need to eat or that you're full, is this leptin signaling. There's a relationship between leptin and your blood sugar, your insulin, and cortisol. And basically what happens is that when your cortisol levels are high, remember, cortisol is your stress hormone made by your adrenal glands. Insulin is the hormone that's made by your pancreas that helps to lower your blood sugar, or basically take the blood sugar from the bloodstream into the cells of your body so that it can be used for energy production. That's primary functions, okay? So cortisol and insulin, they're very closely related. When cortisol goes high, it stimulates the release of stored blood sugar from your liver and from your skeletal muscle. So when cortisol is higher, typically blood sugar is higher. When blood sugar goes higher, your cortisol is higher. So they're directly related. So when cortisol is higher, you typically have an increase in your insulin. When your insulin is higher, you'll tend to have higher cortisol. So they're self-perpetuating. They drive one another. So each hormone stimulates and increases the other. So the important thing to know here is that if you have high insulin, you're more likely to have high cortisol. If you have high cortisol, you're more likely to have high insulin and therefore higher blood sugar. The interesting thing though is that that cortisol creates resistance to leptin receptors. Okay, so you're going to get a little technical, but it's not too hard. Just follow with me. In the center of the brain, you have a structure called the hypothalamus. It is kind of like this common pathway, or it's this structure where your nervous system and your endocrine system and even the immune system, they all kind of meet. Okay, there's a lot of crossroads there where there's a communication and there's a coordination by the hypothalamus, and it helps to drive all of these different systems. So your leptin hormone, where it actually attaches and works, because if you think about it, like, how does the leptin actually stimulate the body to produce or to have less hunger, right? So how does that actually work? Well, how it actually works is that the leptin hormone attaches to receptors on the hypothalamus, and then that signals your body, stimulates the signals that you're full, okay? So the cortisol can actually create leptin resistance. That's not good, because what happens is that whenever someone that has leptin resistance, they can't tell when they're full. So what happens when you can't tell that you're full? You keep eating, right? And you don't have the appropriate signaling that you have that sense of being satiated or full, right? So the problem becomes is that cortisol elevations can do that. They can create this and encourage this resistance. So, always you're looking for root drivers of the process. So what's driving the process what's driving cortisol to be high, right? So what type of stress, chemical, physical, or emotional stresses could be driving it high? If it's, and it's kind of hard to determine what started it. Is blood sugar higher? Why is blood sugar higher? If there is leptin resistance, then you have to really focus on not overeating and making sure. This is one scenario where looking at your calories may be appropriate, to try and help you better understand your caloric intake. That you can figure out, approximate figures of of basal metabolic rate, so the basic rate that you need to produce energy throughout the day. And you can understand with your activity levels, hormonally, if hormone signaling is relatively good with other systems, that you can estimate your needs, right? So you're not overeating too much, because you could eat and eat and eat with leptin resistance and never feel full. So relying on that signal could be deceptive. Now there are some advanced strategies that I think are very beneficial today, using appropriate dietary feast and famine cycles, ketosis, intermittent fasting, and things that can help to improve insulin sensitivity and kind of help with resetting and improving the sensitivity to some of these hormones. But also, really, guys, you've got to get toxins out of your body. You've got to get metals and things that really embed themselves in the neurological tissues. And that's another piece of this puzzle, but the rabbit hole goes in a lot of different directions. So I wanted to just really talk about leptin resistance and how cortisol can promote that. And cortisol and insulin in particular have this self-feeding cycle, and you've got to break that cycle. And so there's various strategies that you can utilize, right? Obviously, looking at caloric intake for the day. If you're eating around your basal metabolic rate, or maybe slightly higher, accounting for activity, that's going to be, maybe a reasonable approach. Using, what I think are really the best strategies are going to be, if it's appropriate for you, of course. This is not medical advice. This is just in a similar case where we might use something like feast-famine cycles, intermittent fasting, ketosis, dietary variation. These are all tools that we might utilize to help improve sensitivity to these hormones and improve body fat loss, and do it in a way that helps to improve these hormonal sensitivities. And then beyond that is really getting at the root of some things that are very difficult to test for, which are really toxicities, environmental chemicals, and metals, especially mercury, which we know embeds primarily in neurological tissues. As always, guys, I'm super humbled by the fact that you want to come hang out with me today. I hope this has helped you. I hope this helps you improve your quality of life, and I look forward to hanging out with you guys on the next podcast. Thanks. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed hanging out behind the scenes with Dr. Shook. You can also talk with and learn from Dr. Shook through Facebook Live on our Facebook page at the Office of Dr. Brad Shook. Don't forget, you can also get access to our videos, guidebooks, and thyroid programs at www.drbradshook.com. Oh yeah, and don't forget one more thing. We can change the world one person, one family, and one community at a time. Until next time, remember, today is your day, and no one will tell you who you are and what you can be.